very good morning to all of the fellow coders present here. Today, the team ACM has come up with a very informative event for you all. I would like you to introduce you to Sarthak Gupta. A very good morning to you, Sarthak.
Good morning, everyone.
Yes, thanks. So, he is currently in second year pursuing a dual degree in CSE from IIT Bhubaneswar. Now comes the interesting part about his achievements. So, he's a 7-star coder who has secured a country rank of 10 and a global rank of 99. Wow. He was also ranked 1 in the Global CodeChef Long Challenge. Even though he's just a second year student just like us, it's really impressive to see such achievements in such a short time. He has also achieved a rank of 84 in the Google Kickstart competition and also a rank of 247 in the Facebook Hacker Cup. I mean, I could just go on with all these numbers, but I don't want to take up much of his time. So we all are very eager to know about your strategies and also if we could steal a few tips from you on pro coding. Over to you, Sarthak.
Yeah, I'll be eager to share my tips as well.
Cool.
I like to share my screen for that matter. Actually, I don't.
Yes.
Just give me a sec. Uh, it's just a rough sketch I've come up with. So I believe there's few third years and fourth years also present in the meeting. Could I get a show of hands of how many are there? It would be great. Could I also ask that is this session interactive or not?
Yes, it will be.
It will be. So for the third years and fourth years mostly, I'd like to begin with them because apart from them having a little bit of experience in CP as well, they know the importance of CP, and so most of the points that I'll be following won't be relevant to them. So for third years and fourth years, I generally suggest that they should at least give 2 to 3 hours to competitive programming. The reason for that is simply because your placements require that, and you'll whenever you sit for any company, they'll at least have one mock round in which they're going to check your data structures and algorithms, and that's probably going to be a competitive programming contest. And in that round, generally the people who score well are selected further. The reason most companies follow this is because most MNCs follow this and they need it. Companies like Google, Facebook, and Amazon really need people that have that those kinds of data structures knowledge. So just following the trend, most companies will follow that trend. So I'd suggest that you give your ample amount of time to competitive programming, but uh, your competitive programming should majorly be focused on lead code and hacker rank. The reason for that is because if you're just starting right now, you can't probably master or cover that much of ground on more professional sites that are oriented just towards competitive programming. Platforms like HackRank and LeetCode are more focused towards getting you placed, so are more things that you can go up to. Apart from that, I suggest that you also manage your time equally to your projects, and because they are equally important for you guys as well, you'll be realizing that when you'll be applying for interns or probably applying for placements, you'll need some referrals if it's not a campus placement, and those referrals generally come through CP. To give you my personal experience from this is that when I applied for Google or I applied for Amazon, I needed a referral, and as soon as I contacted some people on LinkedIn, the first and only thing they asked was my Codeforces handle. That was pretty much the first three guys I contacted. The fourth one asked me to fill a form, and that completely was based on what my competitive programming profile was. Apart from that, now I'll focus the talk majorly towards the general area. So, what is competitive programming and why do you need it? See, majorly when you're thinking of computer science as a whole, you'll be needing some kind of data structures and algorithms to support any kind of operation you're doing. Be it probably if you're designing a system, you're going to need to efficientize optimize some kind of data. And when you need to do that, you generally tend to focus on data structures and algorithms. So companies aren't specifically looking for competitive programming, but they're looking for data structures and algorithms. Now, there are a couple of ways to do that. The most prominent one is competitive programming, because the reason for that is the companies can test you faster in that ways. There are other ways for doing that as well, but they're not as efficient as competitive programming. So that's where it steps in. Now, competitive programming, apart from just data structures and algorithms, also helps you learn problem solving skills. It helps you get in recognition, as I suggested earlier, that it helps you get referrals, recognition in that basis. Apart from that, recognition also comes in the basis that if you participate for esteemed competitions, let's say Hacker Cup, Kickstart, Cora Challenge, these help you get recognition and straight away intern opportunities. I remember I performed really well in Cora Challenge. I had a good decent rank and they contacted me straight away. They weren't aware of my resume and all. Still they approached me and they were ready to give me a job. They didn't know that I was still in the second year, so I couldn't handle that much of pressure. But that's how interested and keen these guys are. So you should focus on these because they open you up to a lot of opportunities that you'll not get straight away. Uh, and the reason for more about these companies opting for competitive programming instead of things that you learn in development tools, React, or maybe you learn Node.js, or you probably focus on Flask and Python, is that at least the major MNCs won't focus on these technologies. Google will never ask you to code something in React ever, because these companies, the internal companies like Microsoft and Google, will have their own technologies that they use. They use their own type of languages, own set of rules. They'll never ask you to code in React or Python. So that's why they really do not give a damn about what syntax you learn. They focus on what concepts you have learned along the way. So I'll tell you about my journey that I came on. What my background basically is I'm from IIT Bhubaneswar, as your friend pointed out, and I prepared for JEE for 2 years in my plus one and plus two from Chandigarh. And during that time, I also prepared for a regional mathematics Olympiad, which I cleared. So I have a good background in mathematics. That's what probably gives me an edge in computer science. I'll focus on the maths part in a later part, but I'll suggest that maths is really important in computer science, and that's what gives me this edge. So the first contest that I ever gave was an induction contest to the coding society in my college. Uh, the basis how it goes was that some top few contestants or some keen contestants out of the contest was selected to be inducted into the coding society. Although it's not that much of glamour to the coding society, what it gave me was a start of what competitive programming was. And because see, first year is a time when you can do a lot of stuff. You do not have any responsibilities, no societies, no fest, and probably academics are also non-existent at that time. So that is a time that I could really spend on CP, and I'm lucky to get introduced to it at that early at its stage. So this was back in October 2019, and it's been about 1.5 years since that contest. I'll probably say that by now I've probably learned all the three types of languages majorly that come under computer science. It's the types, not there are various languages, but the types that majorly follow are interpreter type. That's Python. Probably the more basics one that everyone's more familiar with, C, C++, or the more development side languages that are Java. As far as CP goes, I prefer C and C++. The reason for that is they're faster. In competitions that really require that amount of speed, they give you an edge. Secondly, the community is C++ driven. So what majorly is find good resources in C++. Good example for that is if you any of you guys have heard, CP Algo is a good Russian site that gives you a lot of good codes, and you can play around with a lot of concepts reading through those blogs. So that's all C++ based. The codes are completely C++ based. And even if you go to a random code forces blog, that's also is completely C++ based. So for those of you who do not know what CP Algo or code forces is, I'm going to explain it further. They're just some platforms that you can practice computer programming on. Now coming to what coding culture is and why it's important. So simply put, coding culture is what you guys do around while coding. How much you discuss with each other, what kind of resources you share with each other, the atmosphere around you. Now that plays an important role. I'll tell you how it does is. See, there are many friends of mine that did not do CP, that weren't from my college. The reason simply was, it's not that they didn't have the appropriate mindset or they did not have the appropriate time. The basic reason was they did not have someone to talk to daily about what they did or the new ideas they came or something new that they learned. Now, when you don't have that kind of enthusiasm along with you and there are not enough people connected with you, you somewhere get demotivated and it does not work very well. So what I suggest is always keep a bunch of friends that are just as enthusiastic about competitive programming as you. And the way that will help you is all of you will grow at an exponential rate that you would have individually. Reason would be that, let's suppose your friend learns a topic and you learn some other topic. Both of you could probably combine that in a day or two, and you'd probably take a week to learn because you see your friends almost thinks like you. Okay? So when they think like you, they'll have a tendency to explain it better to you. The simple funda for this is when you have an exam and the professor probably teaches you for like half a semester or one full semester about everything that's been there, and your friend probably finishes telling you most important parts in a night or two. That's all it takes for him. So that's why I suggest that taking each other's help is more important. Now, how you can contribute to a good coding culture is basically what I suggest is there are often very prestigious contests held every month that I suggest everyone should take part of. The long challenges held by CodeChef every month. I suggest for the first years at least participate at 10 to 12 long challenges before you decide to move on from CP, because long challenges really give you a way to improve your thinking. Uh, Apart from that, there are more monthly contests like Kickstart happens every month. There are some routine contests like Code Jam happens once a year. Hacker Cup happens once a year. There's lots of contests that happens once a year, but long challenges happen frequently every month. Their code forces contests, they happen very frequently. They happen like 2 to 3 days a week, every 2 to 3 days. And once you develop that kind of culture where you're discussing with your peers, you'll realize that most of you will improve a lot. What would happen would be eventually you'd be talking about stuff that you wouldn't have in a year. See, I personally have a circle of about 4 to 5 friends. Okay, most of them are not from my own college. uh One friend, two friends of mine are from my college and two aren't. All of them are 7 stars. uh, Actually one of them isn't. And the point is, what I did was that I used to learn CP from my friends. I did not know the basic syntax also when I sat for my first induction contest as well. I did not know the basic concepts. I was good at math, so the contest felt really easy to me because I could solve it mathematically. To give you an example, what CP is different from general programming you would do is, let's suppose that you have some question which you could do very easily if you just code in 2 or 3 loops. Let's suppose I'll give you a question. Just a second. Uh, let's suppose you have n bulbs. This is the first ever question that I attempted. So what you would do is, first you would go and first all the bulbs are switched off. So what you would do is, first anyone would probably first you would go and switch on all the bulbs that are uh, multiples of one. That's all of them. Then what you would do is select all the ones that are with multiples of two, and you'll reverse them. If they were on, you'll switch them off. If they were off, then you'll switch them on. You'll do this for three. You'll do this for four. You'll do this for five. You'll do this for n. So anyone could do this. Probably you'd keep some kinds of arrays and some kind of data structure, some kind of minuscule data structure to support this, and you'll probably get a complexity of n square or n log n, whatever you feel like. But what the question wants you to do is to solve it mathematically. The answer, I'll tell you what the answer is, and not prove it right now, but the answer is simply square root of n, floor of square root of n. And the point is, mathematically reaching there is more important, because on a large scale, if I explain it, what you have done is you've reduced an n or n square code to an O1 or O log n code. So that will scale to massive profits on your actual some massive data structure you're building. Let's suppose you're designing a system and some part of it uses some algorithm that could probably be improved in such fashion that could save you about lakhs to crores of rupees in multiples of amounts that could save you, because it could save you time, it could save you money, and that's where it brings in value. Basically where it brings in value is saving you time and memory. So apart from that, let's move on. uh, so some suggestions that I came up with was, you shouldn't compete with people around you, especially that you can learn from. Compete with people that are way above your league, do that, but don't compete with people that are just above you, or compete with them on a friendly way that you're willing to learn from them. uh, for example, let's suppose that there's a friend of yours that who's just learned some new topic and you're wanting to learn that topic. Go to that person and learn from him. I'm telling you, both of you are going to gain from it. Because when you teach, I'll tell you, obviously it's clear that the person who's learning is going to gain something, but even the person who's teaching gains something out of it. I'll tell you what you gain out of it is, when you teach something, you're crystal clear after that that what you know and what you don't, and whatever you don't know, obviously you're going to work on finding how you can know that, and you're not in that vague cloud that you might or might not know something. So that's absolutely useful when you're trying to analyze where you stand. I till date follow it. I'm probably, as someone suggested, that I'm in top 10 India. But what happens is most of my friends are there. I'll tell you, most of my friends are there in top 20 as well. So what happens is we compete among each other. What would happen is, let's suppose we've given a contest. All of us would be giving it, even if someone's informed us or not. And what would happen would be, at the end of the contest, we'd obviously realize that someone's done this problem and someone's not. We'd obviously discuss with each other how someone's got that approach, and basically what things that come to his mind while solving that problem. Now, how that helps is that whenever someone solves a problem, the whole group gets to know how to solve that problem. Even if it's after the contest, the main point is that we do not tend to focus on solving more problems. We tend to focus that we're able to do every problem that comes in our way. Take less problems, take good problems. So that's obviously the second cliche concept, that do not solve a bunch of problems. I've seen people posting a lot of stuff that I've done these many questions on Code Forces, these many questions on LinkedIn or Lead Code, or these many questions on HackerRank. I highly suggest against it. The reason for that is I never did it, and I'll tell you, if I were to do it, I could do it in a couple of months or couple of weeks, whatever the time is needed for it. But it's not fruitful. It's not at all fruitful, because first, you cannot even put that in your resume. It's not something that's very quality or very cliche that you can put in your resume. And secondly, that does not help, because when you're going to be encounter with a problem, it's going to be a mixture of two or three concepts, and it doesn't matter how many problems you solve. It'll matter that if you solve the one that matters. So what I suggest is pick hard problems. That's probably okay. You could build something, try with the easy ones so that you get what the concept is, then move to a middle level, then to the hardest one. But after you follow the sequential step, do not go to like, let's focus more on more problems for practice. You don't really need that. What I suggest for that is, if you really need to practice, give contests frequently. There are contests in Code Forces, there are contests in CodeChef, there are contests on HackerRank. Give them frequently. You'll have a lot of practice. The more contests you give, the better you get. And what would happen would be, when you give contests, there's a tendency to remember the things you couldn't do. I'll tell you why I feel that is true is because most of us would remember things that we regret. When you think back to your life, there are hardly things that you remember that you were really happy about. You happy about something, you forget. You tend to forget that. Good memories do not stay. That's what I believe. I could be wrong. So what I believe is, people tend to remember what we regret. Now, obviously, you're going to regret when you couldn't solve some problems. But when you're not able to solve some problems, you remember them. Now they can be stored as checkpoints in your database that these are the problems that I could not solve. So now whenever you're looking back to a concept, you'll look back to a problem, you'll remember how you solved it, and you'll get the hang of it. Even as of today, I'll probably not be not knowing more than 20 to 25 concepts and 3 to 4 data structures. That'll probably be it. Now the way I go about it is competing with people who know 100 to 200 data structures or algorithms, and uh, probably books of they've written books, read books of algorithms. I would go about is I'll focus on what I know and I'll know them efficiently. So what would happen would be that I can combine any 20 of those concepts that I know. If you ask a concept that could be done by combining 3 or 4 concepts that I know, I'll be able to do it. That's what I primarily focus on. Could be this does not work for you. If this does not work for you, I'll suggest that you focus on this other strategy, that is learn more concepts, practice more. But if you focus on the other concept, then you'll have to focus more on practicing, and practicing good questions, not practicing questions that you can do. If you're practicing a question that you can already do, you're not learning something. Practice questions that challenge you to think something. They're not that you could do in the first. Now, for the first years, I also suggest that you give a lot of time to CP. The reason for that is do not move into development in the first stage itself. The simple reason for that is you have ample amount of time. You'll have the enthusiasm to do CP. The later you start, the harder it gets. It's not going to get easy. It's not easy even as of now, and it gets harder as you gradually time passes. I'll tell you, I know a couple of friends of mine. They thought that they'll probably do development first, start with some web development, React and Node.js, and probably complete some Android portion as well, and then move back to CP during the placement time. It did not work well for them because the reason is when you just are just starting, you're fresh, so you easily able to grasp concepts. When you move forward, it doesn't tend to happen that fluently. It gets harder. Development, I feel that can be done even at later stages. The reason for that is you're mugging up most of the stuff. It's not something you're putting a lot of brain into. It's copying syntaxes from Google, learning how to design. It does not require that amount of brain activity that you'll require in CP, because you need some portions that are going to require a lot of challenging tasks, that you're going to have to think something new has to come from your side. Now, when that kind of input is required, it's suggested that it goes in the earlier stages when you still have the enthusiasm to do that. Now, something that I previously pointed out is that I'm good at maths, and that helps. I'll tell you how that helps is I'll give you a live example. First, there's a friend of mine. He does not do DSA. He's not even interested. He's not from computer science background, and he's not interested in that field. He's probably doing something else, and he just does math for fun. He created Indian Mathematics Olympiad, I guess, in 2018, and he's really good at maths. Probably some of the best people I've known, and he's able to manage first 3 questions of code forces without any difficulty. He does it faster than me, even as of still. Unless you probably give a data structure oriented question in the first three, which is rare. Code Force's first 3 questions on a Div 2 contest are probably going to be uh, maths oriented, greedy oriented. For those of you who do not know what greedy is, it's just a fancy way of saying tukka marna, and flukes probably. And so basically, what you need to realize is maths is important. So I'd suggest for those of you who after this talk do want to take up competitive programming seriously, break your learning part into 2 parts: the data structures and algorithms, and the maths part. Now, what 2 major topics I believe are most important in maths in CP are PNC and number theory. So number theory is important because nowadays most of your calculations that are even done are done in number theory. The more you read about it, the more you'll know that how most of things are used, and the maths that's not taught to us. Number theory is a topic that's not taught to most of us in our school ages. The reason for that is it's not that important at that time. It's not even important for engineering tests. So number theory is not taught. So this is a topic that's mostly new to most of the people, and it's important in CP. PNC is a topic that most of the people are relatively familiar with. What it is what it comes down to is, in CP it comes down to practical application of it. You have to strike the problem real fast. You can't have all day long to think about problems. You've got to get quick at those. Apart from this, the topics that I did not put and are still considered to be part of mathematics are game theory. Game theory is something that I suggest that after you're able to manage like first three problems of code forces, then code forces in div 2, then you can move to game theory, and probably then there's functionation. You could once you get a hang of it, you'll probably come across a lot more topics than I pointed out. Excuse me. So So what maths also helps you do is it helps you prove your intuitions. Now, what I would suggest is, let's say you get a question and you know that some answer is right. You can feel that the samples uh, obey the pattern that you've observed. You've observed a pattern, and some sample cases that you took from your own on a question are obeying that pattern. So now you want to prove that your intuition is correct. There mathematics helps play an important role. Of more than often what happens is, even though if your intuition or pattern observation is not completely correct, what would happen would be, when you're trying to prove something or disprove something, you'll probably stumble upon the accurate solution that needed to be provided. And more often than not, that's happened to be the case with me. Now how that helps is, I'll tell you something, that I follow a mathematics channel. It's not related to CP. It's just pure maths. And I like it a lot because that's something I do in my free time. But how that helps is, call it coincidence, but whenever I've learned something new on that channel, I've seen that problem in like maximum of 3 days in a live contest. I've seen something related to it. Now that helps. Okay, so what would happen would be, let's suppose somebody who's vaguely new to that concept is figuring out the mathematical part, then comes down to the answer, and then writes down the code. And someone who knows the maths and just writes on the code gets a lot of boost and lot of confidence doing it. It's more likely to get that answer accurate. Now, that generally will be the case in mostly mathematical questions. There's some questions that are basically based on data structures and algorithms, completely throws maths away. And some questions that are more prominent nowadays are a mixture of those, in which first you'll have to mathematically break down the problem, get into some known data structure problem, and then solve it. So, what I have always considered CP to be is a more, let's say, versatile maths contest. It's what it's to me. It's a maths contest to me with lot of vast aspects to it. Now, coming to what you could do for your data structures and algorithms, and now what you should do is focus on truncating your syllabus into three major parts. The first should be arrays, the second should be trees, and third should be graphs. Now, sounds very silly that I've only taken three topics, but all of these topics have lots more topics in between them. When you're going to study arrays, you're going to find lots more algorithms that are related to it. These are only the data structures. So the algorithms that basically you're going to cover are going to include probably binary search, two pointers, or probably you could do sorting algorithms are important ones. When you're starting arrays, it's probably suggested that you also go through the STL. You could probably follow any GFG link or any source that you feel like. STL is pretty much okay. After that, when you're complete with arrays, you'll solve a lot of problems on subsequences and sub arrays as well. Now, how that helps is, you'll also learn some data structures that are useful, like segment trees. You'll learn most applications of the STL. Now, when you're moving to trees, you'll learn about lots of stuff that are uh, beyond arrays. You learn about Euler tools, you learn about DFS. Most of the topics I'm saying might not make sense to you, but when you'll be learning them, you'll realize this. When you learn trees, arrays is a prerequisite. You cannot do trees without arrays. If someone tells you that he's not that good at arrays but he's good at trees, he's bluffing. Or he does not know himself that what he's speaking. because whenever someone can solve a question on trees, he can definitely do it on an array, because array is a subset of trees, for those of you who don't know. And similarly, the same proportion goes through graphs. Now, what would happen would be each of them have their own set of algorithms as well. When you're starting trees, you'll learn some new data structures. When you're starting graphs, you'll come across more ones. What I suggest is, do not try to go and cope up with all the theory that in the world. The best way to go through it is go through contest basis. Give contest. Whenever you encounter a new problem, get the theory then. That way you'll remember more. Because I've seen people, and even I tried it for a while. It did not work for you. Might work for you. But what does not work, according to me, is trying to go through the syllabus once and then trying the problems. It does not work. Probably what might work is going through this syllabus and then practicing questions relating to it. What works for me is the quite opposite. I first look at problems, then go and look at the theory. Now, how that helps me is, I'll obviously get some kind of pain that I could not solve a question. I generally tend to remember the theory that's behind it. Even as of today, I'll probably be behind some topics, and whenever I get a question related to it, I'm pretty confident that whenever I get a question to it, I'll learn the theory and I'll be able to do it. Could be the case that I'll not be able to do it in a 2 or 3 hour contest, but if given ample amount of time, I'll be able to do it. Now, some question that also come when talking about ample amount of time, it varies. Because when you're starting in your first years or you're starting CP, it's suggested that you give less amount of time to problems, look at solutions, give less amount of thought to it. When you reach a certain level, it's suggested that you do not look at solutions and probably give more time. I think that's the general trend also follows. One thing I also suggest is that people have a myth that some kind of Tier 1 colleges have a better tendency, or someone that's from an IIT has a better tendency, or someone who knows something has a better tendency of getting better at CP. It's completely absurd. The only basis that has is its maths, because generally what you would do is you would probably learn that maths. If a normal student had to do CP, he learned that maths, he learned that data structures and algorithm, and he'll go about doing a CP on a normal routine. What the generally advanced kid would do is he'll already have covered his maths question. So he'll straight away start with data structures and algorithms. He'll get the confidence and he'll do it. That's pretty much it. It's not that you can't do it. If given 2 months of extra time, anyone could master the maths that I or anyone else has extra. It's not more than 2 months. I know a friend of mine that did not have that mathematical background, and he was able to match my maths in about 35 days or 40 days maximum, give or take. So you could probably imagine, if you give ample amount of time to it, it'll take you about 2 months, and 2 months to get a whole grab of it. After 20 to 30 days, you'll see improvements, that some specific results will be there. Now, things that I also like to focus on are upsolving. What upsolving is, basically when you give a contest, what would happen would be that when it's over, that after a couple of days, there's solutions provided to it. So call it editorials. They're generally known as editorials. So what would be, some part of theory would be given that is needed to be needed for the solving of that problem. Then what would be required would be, you would require some kind of uh, data structures and algorithm, and links to those would be given, and some code would be given. What I suggest is, first focus on first three questions of code forces if you're quite confident with code forces. If you're not, start with lead code hackerrank, get a hang of CP, then move to CodeChef, then move to code forces. Now, what I did was, because I said I'm good at math, so I skipped lead code and hackerrank. I straight away moved to CodeChef. But the general flow, I suggest that you do not do that, because that generally does is, you skip some steps, you're tending to lose some focus. The way I recognized that was, after my first long challenge in CodeChef, I straight away moved to Code Forces. And in my first contest, I remember I was only able to solve one question, and it took me about 1 hour 45 minutes to code that out. So what I realized was, no, I would not do code forces for quite some time until I get to the level that I need to do code forces. So you need to build things up gradually. It will take time. I suggest that up solving is the most important part. Reading through editorials helps, and reading other people's code also helps. What you realize is competitive programming also gives you an edge, that you develop patience of reading other people's code. You develop patience to read other people's code. You develop patience to write some kind of code that still manageable to understand, or some editability to it is there. At least to your brain, it's there. What that would give you is a sense of, when you're starting big projects, you'll tend to break it down to smaller problems and solve it completely relatively easy. That's the connection I found between development and CP, and that's pretty much the only connection I have till now is. But what I suggest is, reading editorials gives you 2 or 3 edges that people don't realize. Most of us do not have that mathematical background that foreign colleges have. Foreign colleges generally have a doctor type of mathematics. They'll probably teach you formally about all these mathematical tools. They'll give you PDFs, research papers, and the way of writing is there. For us, it's not there. It's not present, at least for my college. It's not. I'm not sure about yours. But in a general scenario, at least I could say for CBSE board student, it was not there. In my curriculum, it was not there. So what I faced was that whenever you're trying to learn something mathematical, there's a lot of terminology and writing style that I could not get. There's still terminology that I do not get. But once you get familiar with it, you'll realize that that really makes your life easier. So start reading editorials, start reading solutions of people that are way above you. So what we would do is, you'll start adopting their styles. And when you start adopting their styles, you'll see refinement in your code and strategies when you go along the way. A coder that I personally followed for this was William Lin. He's probably a red coder on Code Forces by now, and uh, concurrently, he's younger than me, probably in high school right now. And the point was that when I used to look at his codes, I used to realize that there are a lot of things that I did not follow. I did not know about fast input output till I did not look at his codes. I did not know that there are things that I did not use and should be used, like using bitwise operators or using ternary operators instead of the normal if-else that I use. Because it might not seem like much, but when it really comes down to it, it helps. And now uh, that's all, pretty much all about upsolving. I'll suggest that if you're not doing anything else, and if you feel that you're too busy and you'll probably not be able to manage that amount of CP, what I suggest is just focus on giving contests, reading editorials, and that's pretty much it. Do not do anything else. Even if you complete this for like 1.5 year or 2 years, you'll be at some presentable level. You'll probably ace your uh, interview contests and probably get a lot of opportunities that you might not have gotten directly. So some few resources that I suggest, I'll probably hand out this link of the PDF in the chat if it's allowed. Just let me take a look at it. This PDF mostly has I don't think I can share it. So I'll ask some of your friends to do it. Oh, okay. I'm sorry, I did not attend to your message. I'll tell the name. I think the channel is known as Michael Penn. You can probably YouTube it, and it's not necessary. It's just something I pick up for fun time. It's not necessary. My friends don't do it. I do it because I feel that maths is probably something that I do in my free time. I'm not. I hardly feel that's good, but now other sources that you could follow would be GFG. GFG is a good place when you probably want to syntax something and you're good with concepts. You just need the syntax. GFG is the place you should look up to. Other YouTubers that I remember were good at the time I was learning was one of the Shah's video was very good. You could Google him. I think he's pretty famous by now. And his blogs on Code Forces help. They're really helpful. I'll tell you, out of I've probably given 17 long challenges by now, and out of those, I've won 5 of them. So, like 4 to 5 of them. So, what happened was in those long challenges, there's probably going to be a research question. And what that research question required was that you're going to have to Google a lot. you're going to eventually stumble on some blog or some research paper. You're going to have to scrape it, and you're going to have to code it out. So that's pretty much it. Codeforces blogs help, and there are topics that Codeforces blogs can give you that probably you would not find in a general textbook that you pick up. Second thing I would suggest would be CP Algo. Also helps. It has pretty much everything you would need to probably be a master's at Codeforces and Red Star, at least at CC. When you are above one step, that you'll probably figure out what sources you need to follow and what path that you should actually go and get down to. Also, things that I suggest apart from all this is, do give ample amount of time to CP. The reason is, and do not expect results before you're not giving ample amount of time. I'll tell you, my friends who are all 7 stars have one thing in common. All of them have different beliefs about grouping or sources they should follow. But one thing everyone has common is, whenever there's a contest, 90% attendance out of among us guys is there. There's hardly a guy that's not giving the contest. And if he's not given the contest, it's probably something shattering. He's probably having COVID or something. Otherwise, we definitely win the contest. I'll tell you, my sleep pattern generally reduces to about average sleep of 4 hours per week during a long contest, and it's about generally it goes about 6 hours. So you'll have that pressure, but it'll feel good at some point. I'll tell you, at the starting when I started this kind of hectic routine, it felt really bad. I did not feel anything good about it. But eventually, when you start getting results, it feels good. It really feels good. As of now, because I remember that the people, I did not even think before giving contests that I needed to prepare for them, and there are opportunities that I've gotten because of them, just because by giving those contests. For example, there are contests that even Codeforces organizes that offer you internship opportunities and even placement opportunities. But the thing is, you got to be really good at those, because it's there. It is competitive. Things I also suggest is to open up and look at things. When you're looking for higher salaries, you're probably going to have to look at some big companies. When you look at those big companies, you're going to have limited opportunities. You're going to compete on a global scale. If you compete on an Indian scale, your opportunities drastically reduce. Because let's say I'll give you a real type scenario, you'll probably have 2 to 3 metropolitan cities that in India actually offer IT, offer computer science internships and placements. And when you look at the stats, it's really horrifying that you'll not get those many opportunities, and everyone's going to compete for it. So even when you give a kickstart, you'll realize that there are lots of people going to be giving those contests. The people ready to take this route. What CP also offers is, it's not about getting first. Like most people say that you got to get to this level. You can choose what level you want to get to. Like there's a friend of mine I know, he just does not want to go ahead of candidate master, and that's where he's settled at. But he's given ample amount of time to get there. So what I suggest is, realize what your level you want to get to, what you're aiming for, and what's needed for it. So because if you're aiming for something like Google or Amazon, you're going to need a lot higher level than you're probably hoping for. If you're hoping for that, no, you're not into those kinds of stuff, and you're probably more towards the development side and not towards the data structure side, you'll probably require less of CP and more of development. You can focus that ways, but eventually you're going to have to do CP some way or the other, because most companies would take an interview test based on data structures and algorithms solely. That's pretty much it. If you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to entertain them.
Yeah, hello. Thank you for taking questions. Thank you for your session also. But I just want to know some sources where you learn maths from.
Maths. I've sent you I'll send you the PDF just a second if it's there in the chat. What the PDF is it's a complete thing. It has the maths as well. Okay. It'll cover your basic number theory, probability, game theory. It has most of the stuff that you'll require. When you get to a step that you're not able to do it, follow some mathematical channel. Um, Actually, the problem would be, I won't be able to suggest you such good mathematical maths channels, because the reason is I never faced that problem. I had a good mathematical background and I never spent a dime day on maths. the way I go about maths in my colleges, I generally teach people who want to learn maths. What I suggest is your college curriculum must be having that, because if your college curriculum does not have, your friend's college curriculum must be having that. That's how I went about it. Because let's say you're a computer science student, generally in third or second year, you're going to have number theory, discrete mathematics in your syllabus, and that's pretty much required in CP. You're going to have to do that in advance.
Okay. So you are mentioning about these PDFs. What I mean, these competitive programming handbook.
Yeah, this competitive programming handbook has math in advanced topics. It'll have the mathematical topics included as well.
Yeah.
It'll
Okay,
give you the
thanks.
basics. More or less, what would happen would be when you're solving code forces problems, right? So you'll get to know what you don't know, and once you clear that what you don't know, you'll get a good sense of googling. What would happen would be you'll get really good at googling. Actually, the point is, once you develop a habit of learning things, you'll get good at googling, because googling would help you realize that what you don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Okay, most people take googling for granted, but actually as of now I feel googling is an important skill, because I feel I have an edge there, because my friend and I are probably practically at the same level as competitive programming. We're both 7 stars, you could say. Both did similar kind of education, similar levels. But what edge I have is when we give a long contest, and how I beat him eventually is I'm always able to solve all the solvable questions. And that's why I'm able to do that is I'm pretty good at Googling. When you give me a question and I'm sure that it's present at Google, I'll Google it. And there's a question I remember I found an 11th page Google search. So that's how far it can go. That's how far, probably think about it. As a setter would also be going that far.
Yeah.
More than often, you'll realize that people are Googling that.
Yeah. In fact, I started competitive programming in second year. So that's in code forces too. But I just reached people last week. That's it.
Okay.
So it took a lot of time. In fact, so any tips from?
Yeah, what I suggest is forget about your rating. One.
Yeah.
That's just the barrier that you've put yourself into. What I suggest is take targets. Keep a target that you got to do this first three. You got to master the first three problems in 1 month. Once you take that kind of pressure, then you'll know what you need to do. You'll be crystal clear that you'll be crystal clear what you need to do. Once you're crystal clear about what you need to do, you'll get there. Focus on maths, focus on greedy, focus on DP. That's the only three topics you need for first three questions. And I think if you're able to do diff to first three questions, you'll probably be able to get to somewhere about 1800. You'll touch 1800 some point. What I also suggest is that code forces div 3 contests are somewhere important as well when you want to learn concepts. They're not based on math solely. They have data structures and algorithm questions as well.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, I certainly felt data structures and algorithms part I can cover well, but maths is something where I'm struggling a lot.
So what I suggest is give the PDF a try. Once you give the PDF a try, learn the topics. If you still feel that you need more help, I'll probably provide you some of the sources that my college provides with me. Or what you could do is follow that mathematical channel. You'll get some sense of it. What would happen would be once you eventually start to enjoy maths, you'll feel better about it. What you need to realize is, do you realize what number theory is? Congruent modulus.
Yeah, a bit, not completely, but
So what I suggest is practice congruent modulus. Congruent modulus is very, very important in competitive programming. Even though what problem you would face would be in maths would be that you'll always be having lesser sources. You'll always be having lesser sources for maths because you do not know how to go about it. The best way to go about is pick a person that knows and could teach you. Simple. Pick a person that knows and could teach you, or at least get to know the topics you don't. You'll find someone that will at least tell you that you need to know these things. If you want a descriptive syllabus about the maths that's exactly needed, I'll suggest you need congruent modulus.
You'll probably need everything that Euclid's written. Everything that Euclid's written is gold in CP.
Yeah.
Okay, so and you'll probably need everything that's basically when you'll cover some things in code forces now, you'll realize that you lack those. Do you have a tendency to read editorials?
Yes, yes.
So have you realized that when you're reading the normal format of those editorials, it's way different from the answers that you or me could come up with.
Yep.
Even if the answer is same, the writing style is way too different.
Yeah.
So once you adopt that writing style, you'll get the maths naturally.
Okay.
Okay, try to adopt
Okay.
that writing style. It will help you. Okay, so the YouTube channel I was suggesting was one was Michael Penn. He probably does Olympiad questions, and I'm still not very keen on telling you that because it's something purely maths, not really suggested and promoted in the community. But maths helps. Okay, so if uh, another question that I just encountered was if I'm into development as well. Yeah, of course I'm into development as of now. I'll give about 60% of my time to development as of now because I'm almost at the end of my second year and I'm at some point satisfied with my competitive programming level as well. It'll go on. Obviously, I'll give some ample amount of time to CP as well, but I only give contest time to CP as well. So the rest of the time is completely development. Uh, I think I'm clear with the YouTube channel question. And so you're facing problems with arrays, right? You're comfortable with arrays and you're facing problems with trees and difficulties. Could I please know that what all algos are you comfortable in arrays? Like, are you comfortable with questions that require probably subsequence or sub array questions and require 2 pointers or binary search? Uh, so you're comfortable with those topics. So I believe you're good. So are you comfortable with segment trees? No. Segment trees is one thing you need to do. Are you comfortable with square root decomposition? Focus on these two topics. Trees. Before going to trees, you need to know. You need these two topics. Otherwise, you won't find trees to be that benefit. Because when you move to trees, you'll probably need these algos. And what would eventually happen would be, I'll give you some insight to it, is for those of you who do not understand, I'm really sorry, but what happens is when you have trees, you have a Euler tool to it. So when you go through a DFS, you'll probably have a Euler tool. Now there are various ways that you can convert that Euler tool into the original. Let's suppose you have a problem on a tree, you can convert that to an array question, and then you just need to know how to solve that array question. So what kind of development I'm going right now? Right now I'm interning for a navigation company. Basically we are trying to build something of a Google map, some kind of a Google map navigation app. And apart from that, I'm familiar with Java. I'm familiar with MERN and I'm familiar with Python for machine learning as well. When it comes to MERN and Java, I'm good with reading codes. I don't have much projects in Java. MERNStack, I do have a project in MERNStack. And when it comes to Python and ML, I'm okay with Python basic syntax. I even do CP in Python sometimes when it's required. But apart from that, when it comes to machine learning, I just know the basic algorithms. I really haven't tried something implementing from my first year students, as I pointed out, focus on CP. I still strongly suggest CP. If you feel otherwise, it's still great. But CP is the bet I went on, and I can give you my reason for it. Okay, I'll just Google search it. I don't even exactly remember it. Um, yeah, my Is it all right to do CP in any language? If in my case, I strongly suggest that you learn C++ with CP. Most people won't suggest you that, but the reason I suggest that is, even though you know Python and you can do most of your contests on CodeForces or CodeChef in Python, you can't do all of CP in Python. You can't practice on HackerCom contests. You can't give quick start contests in Python. You can give them, but you'll have a disadvantage. They do not give you multiplies. The reason for that is C++ is close to machine language, more close to machine language, and Python is way far further away down the road. So Python is 5x slower than C++. There are platforms like CodeForce and CodeChef that provide that 5x multiplier for you. So if the normal limit for problem is 1 second, that's C++ limit. Python limit would be 5 seconds. But and it's relatively same. But when you go to a Kickstart contest, or you go to a Code Jam contest, or you go to a Hacker Cup contest, you don't have those multipliers. So you'll be competing with people that already have 5x codes faster than you. It's hard to compete that way. So, and secondly, then there's the problem of where to find the resources in Python. Most resources are going to be based in C++, especially the ones that really matter, like the ones that you can't really find a book on. You can just Google on, there's an article and it's going to be in C++. It's going to be hard to always translate it. If I was to suggest a language for CP, it will be C++. Same reason that I just gave, that it's faster, it's probably has more resources, and that's majorly it. Any other questions?
Yes, please go ahead if you guys have any other questions.
Okay. Actually, I'm really new to Zoom. I'm really sorry about it. I don't even think I can even see how many hands are raised or anything. Okay. Actually, I tried managing my projects with CP. It was a blunder. What I tried initially was, I'll tell you how blundered and messed up it got at some point. What I tried was CP plus ML plus projects. That would be a web development in my case, plus machine learning. It did not work out. I had to drop machine learning at some point, and I focused on web development and CP. What happened was CP took a lot of time. Web development did not thrive that much. What I did was I focused on which level will I be satisfied enough. So I focused. I was at 7 star. Then what I did was I focused my time gradually towards development and left CP away. But what I still focus on is now I can afford that, because what would happen is I do not need to learn and go through tutorials anymore. I'm probably going to be able to solve almost all the questions. They're going to be only one or two questions that I'm not going to get. So I can learn them in like few minutes, half an hour, max 1 hour. So my time for CP is drastically reduced, but my need for that time is also drastically reduced.
Any more questions, guys?
Okay, this one I see. What shall we do when we're stuck at some? See, for beginners, it's suggested only solve problems that you have solutions to. Do not take up problems that you do not have solutions to. It's going to be a hard road. You're not going to find people that are going to give you solution to those problems. You're not going to. It's going to be hard. I still have problems that I do not have solutions to, and I regret those problems. Okay, just a second. Uh, Increasing knowledge graph, I'd say it's better to give long challenges. It's way better any day. Short contests help you to probably practice more. I've never felt that I've learned something miraculously very good in a short contest. On long contest, I generally learn something new each contest. Not right now, at least in my initial 10 months, I could say that each contest I grew something. What do you suggest to learn? I'll tell you something. I'm not fluent in my languages. I still am not. Neither of them. Not even Python or Java that I use for development. Uh, my take on languages is that you can Google syntax. At least the major companies do not require syntax. They're okay with if you're poor with syntax. They're okay if you write pseudocodes. They're okay with you using Google for writing syntax. And I till date, if I have to code some basic STL out, I'll Google the syntax. I do not remember STL syntax. So what I suggest is the way I went about it. I learned basic syntax like literally int main and see out something or scene something, and that then I started. I simply started, and as soon as I needed something, I used to Google how to do it, and I still do it till date. I have a couple of friends that are prevalent in syntax, at least better than me, so I take their help at times, and that's pretty much it. Okay. Are you working with everyone? No, not right now. I have a current intern, and due to that, most of my time goes in that. I am not doing anything else. Oh, okay, okay. Sorry. Just a second. Any other doubts?
So I have a question. Like I'm pursuing in first year, and they started teaching us Python. So how can I master Python? Is just by doing number of programs in websites like HackRank.
Yeah, I think you'll get a hang of it. But what do you want Python for eventually? Like there's various.
Yeah, like as a student, as a CS student, to achieve like a great, like a good job, we need to master right in all the programs.
Like I hardly never face that problem. What I suggest is if you just want the basic syntax down and basic problems, HackerRank is a good platform to do that. HackerRank will get you down.
Yeah, as I'm pursuing in first year, like I need a like startup, right? Like starting website or something.
Okay, HackerRank feels harder for you.
Yes, I did some few easy level programs. That's it. I didn't go into deep yet.
What I suggest is how I went about learning my languages was I used to find some need for what I wanted to learn. First, I would get a need for something I wanted to learn. Then I used to learn it. When I started, because my first language was uh, my first language was C, C++. So what happened was uh, I would basically find something that I needed to do. I'll find a competitive programming problem, code it out. When I started learning Python, I did the same exact thing. I'd code something out, I'll lead the problem, and I'll code it out in Python. Uh, what that would eventually help is you'll learn by solving problems more than you'll learn by reading snippets of code.
Excuse
Try
me.
solving problems, actually, it's better.
Yeah, I'm just sorry to interrupt. Guys, we have only 5 more minutes, so you can ask your questions and then we have to close.
So how did you manage like remaining subjects like chemistry, triple E, and other subjects? Like you're telling we need to put maximum time in computer programming. So how did you
That's a problem.
like CGPA? Like even you need to manage CGPA
CGPA.
and
So I
remaining
am not the
subjects.
best person to answer that question. Actually, there's a friend of mine who is really good at that. I could just maintain like 8.5 CGPA. The way I went about it was the way I went.
8.5, will it be sufficient at the end of the year, even though you're top
Uh,
at computer programming?
I'll tell you how it will be and how it won't be. Let's suppose you're applying for a research intern,
Yeah.
research-based intern. That requires a really high CGPA. It'll probably require you 9.5 CGPA, anywhere around that. Anything less is irrelevant. If you do not want a research intern, which I did not, so I did not focus much on my CGPA, then what you require is above 7.5. The reason for 7.5 or 8 is for campus placements. It's not
Yeah,
even
bro.
for off
Like,
campus placements. For off
if you need to
campus
get
placements, CGPA is
if we
just
need to get a
something
placement in
like
good
your 10th mark
companies
score.
like Google or Microsoft or Amazon, like what CGPA do we need to maintain?
Done. You do not need any CGPA. You do not need
Like
any.
we can be good at computer
Yeah, you just
programming
need to
at
be. They
max.
hire people that do not even have degrees. Yeah, you can do.
Yeah, but to get into a Microsoft or Amazon, is there necessity to get to maintain
No,
CGPA
it is
9 or
not a necessity.
9.5?
It's not a necessity. The only thing they're looking for in a candidate are actually companies you are talking about are actually more focused on C++ or on CP. They require competitive programming. The reason for that is I explained that what would happen would be that these companies have their own set of languages. They do not code in Python. They do not code in JavaScript. They have their own languages. For example, I know that Google codes in TypeScript, and it has further additional libraries that is company intrinsic. You cannot export that. I know that for Microsoft for sure as well. There's a friend of mine who interned in there. So there's specific tools that are proprietary to the company that they give you that you have to code on. So the basic syntax they do not care about. CGPA they do not care about. They would care about what your projects were, how good your projects were, how well you can execute them, how good your concepts are, how well structured your code is in your projects, how good you are at DSA, what your computer programming results were. Like Google gives you an eventual call also if you're good at Kickstart and Code Jump ranks. If your ranks are very prominent, they'll even give you a call for a direct call for an interview. You need not even apply.
So CGPA doesn't matter for bigger companies. Like
It does not matter. For low companies, it would be it'll be like what would happen would be if two candidates are exactly equally matched, then CGPA matters. It's the last thing that will matter.
okay.
And you'll never have a scenario, like two candidates exactly matching. It's never going to be a scenario.
Yeah.
The odds of that are very light. Any other questions?
Okay, so I don't think there are any other questions. That was really great webinar by you, Sarthak. I was really impressed by how you related your real life situations with your coding life. That was really great. I would really you know request all of you to fill the feedback form before you leave, and you can ask any more further questions in the feedback. Thanks a lot, Sarthak.